Now that I no longer suffer from osteoporosis, I can look back at it as just a horrible but distant memory. These days, I run no risk of fractures or breaks in the way I did then, thank goodness. But at the time, it was no joke. I'd fractured my ankle stepping off a curb. I hadn't slipped or stumbled. I just put my foot down normally and the ankle gave way. My health practitioner was worried that such a simple act should result in a fracture, so she sent me for a bone density test. My T-score came back as minus 2.9, which meant not only were my bones becoming more fragile, they were wholly in the osteoporosis range. That was a heck of a shock. I mean, I ate very well, including lots of milk, cheeses, and greens, which are the very best source of calcium. I didn't smoke. I always felt okay. I considered myself to be a healthy person. So how on earth did I end up like this? Naturally, I wanted to be quickly rid of this condition. But more surprises followed. The first surprise was finding out that there's no such thing as an osteoporosis specialist. There's no particular health professional you go to when you find out you have the condition. And so, one reason that osteoporosis care isn't exactly great is because nobody in the health profession actually owns the condition. Depending on your own GP's judgment, you could be treated by an endocrinologist, a gynecologist, a rheumatologist, an orthopedist, a geriatrician, or a physiatrist, plus possibly others. Second surprise was that there are drug treatments for osteoporosis, as we might expect, but they're long-term, unreliable, and riddled with side effects. I don't mind admitting I was very upset when I found out I had osteoporosis. The possibility of further fractures or breaks scared me, to be honest. And I'm not ashamed to say that even though I had supportive family and friends, I felt very alone with the disease. I joined some support groups so I could be with people like me, but some of the news coming from them was very discouraging, which led to the third surprise. A number of them said that dealing with ongoing pain was all part of the package for them. There comes a point, they said, when hurting was just normal. I wasn't prepared for that at all. Naively, perhaps, I had expected a cure. I certainly didn't expect to be in pain for large parts of the rest of my life. Yet it turns out that for some people, the side effects of some drug treatments were worse than the pain. The surprises kept on coming. It was as I began my first course of meds that I found out disturbing news about some of the better-known osteoporosis drugs. Namely, if you ever come off these drugs, then the rate of bone deterioration actively increased. Consumer watchdog groups discovered that once you were off the drugs, bone deterioration picked up so severely that you could experience a broken bone without any physical trauma having caused it. This married up with stories I heard of people fracturing vertebrae because they sneezed. I hadn't quite believed those stories. They were being confirmed by consumer groups and other anecdotal evidence. I slowly realized this could be my future, too. Planning to be disabled? Knowing that osteoporosis would take an ever-increasing toll on my body was a lot to bear. The thought of ending up in a wheelchair because my pelvis or ankles had fractured once too many times scared the daylights out of me. In fact, it was a joke among some sufferers I knew that they were getting ready to pick out canes and walkers for their future selves. They cheerfully described how they'd decorate their wheelchairs. I didn't find this funny at all, yet they were only half joking. So many people with osteoporosis went from able-bodied, mobile, and healthy to broken and wheelchair-bound very quickly. Not the future I wanted. I have to say, the thought of my future self shuffling along with walking aids frightened the life out of me. The knowledge that as the months passed, my ever-weakening bones were making it more likely that I would again fracture an ankle or a hip or a vertebra made me miserable. I searched the internet for some sort of method that would help relieve me of this dreadful illness. I looked at acupuncture and Reiki and all sorts of stuff I would never in a million years have considered before. I found nothing that offered even a glimmer of hope. And then, one day, standing in line at Walgreens of all places, I got talking to a man who changed my life. I was buying painkillers. He was buying hand soap. We were just chatting, and it turns out he too had once suffered from all the usual symptoms of osteoporosis. He'd had a terrible time of it too. But he didn't suffer a single symptom anymore. He told me that at one time his vertebrae were so badly affected that he'd lost half an inch in height. Over several years, he'd gone through a cocktail of different remedies and painkillers, and he enjoyed partial success with just one of them. Even so, his T-score, which measures bone density,